All right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to Travel Tuesday with Blue Planet Scuba. We're so excited to have you join us today. I'll first do some quick introductions. My name is Heather, one of the owners of Blue Planet, and we also have Jonas joining us from our
Hey,
basement. And then Cheryl Patterson from Deep Blue Adventures is here with us today as our special guest. We're super excited.
Hello.
So today we decided to mix it up a little bit. We've been doing trip reports and talking about some of our favorite destinations, but this time we're actually going to talk about what it's like to travel right now. I know a lot of people are concerned about traveling in the time of COVID. How do you do so safely? How do you plan for that? But we also want to take your questions. So the fun thing is, all three of us have been traveling in the past few months. Jonas just got back from St. Croix on Saturday. I was in Baja in Mexico last month. And then Cheryl, when were you in Costa Rica?
I was in Costa Rica the end of October. I got back just in time for Halloween.
Awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit about what our experiences have been and then go through some of the most commonly asked questions that we get. But please, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them into the chat. We will do our best to answer them. And same thing, once this is over, if you're watching a replay, we encourage you to go ahead and add your questions to the comments and we will get back to you, even if it's after the replay is ended. So with that being said, I guess, actually, Jonas, since you just got back from St. Croix, do you want to tell us about your experiences?
sure, yeah. Everyone had a lovely time. It was nice to get out. But yes, most of the people, I would say the majority of the people did admit that they had some reservations, but they just really, really, really needed to get out. And I think going to a lot of these destinations where there's actually lower caseloads, in many ways, we're traveling to places that have fewer cases. So in some ways, than our hometowns like DC. But I think the biggest thing, the concern for people and was the travel part of it, the airlines. In retrospect, I think everybody felt fine in the actual planes because the way that the airlines are managing boarding, detaining, and then service during the time. But the airports was just where it's maybe a bit more challenging to socially distance, and so you just have to be just really alert and aware and bring your own food so you don't have to go stand in line for anything. Once in St. Croix is a tiny little island, so they do not want this, and they are doing everything they can. Everybody there is really good about mask wearing. Many places are checking your temperature before you even enter the grocery store. So everyone admitted that they felt even safer in St. Croix than they do in DC. So yeah, that was our experience.
Sorry, let me unmute myself. And Cheryl, you were in Costa Rica. I should give you guys a little bit more background. We've known Cheryl for years now. Cheryl owns Deep Blue Adventures, which is a travel agency specializing in dive travel and adventure travel, and for both groups and individuals. And so we've been working with Cheryl for years, and we've just had such an incredible experience. You guys have helped us out on putting together some truly amazing adventures. So thank you again, and thank you for joining us today. I'm glad that Cheryl's here because she's the expert. She knows the questions that I can't answer, I go straight to her. So thank you again for getting on with us today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. As far as experience in Costa Rica, I had a very similar experience to Jonas. Just to clarify, Costa Rica right now doesn't have any restrictions. You can go without any testing required. But at the time I went, the PCR testing was in place. I haven't had anyone travel yet that had done the PCR test, and it seemed quite daunting when you first look at that criteria. So I wanted to, volunteers tribute, and I went through the whole PCR testing process, which wasn't anywhere near as challenging as it first looks on paper. That being said, I would say the same experience as Jonas. The airports have a little bit of a weak link, in my opinion. the airlines maybe but they're doing an awful lot. And if you look at some of the studies that are out there, I think one right now, I'm not quite sure if I agree with the statistics, but they're saying you're more likely to be struck by lightning at this point with current protocols in place than catch COVID on a plane. So that's kind of, I don't know that would go that far, but it's encouraging how much they're doing to try and prevent that from happening. Once I was in Costa Rica, it was incredible. And I'm getting this report from a lot of other destinations as well. The hand sanitization, I was out in the jungle, zip lines and doing rainforest walks. And part of the rules there is before you participate in any kind of activity, you've got to wash your hands. And it was amazing to see the ingenuity, Primo bottles rigged with a little foot pedal so you could wash your hands properly in the middle of the jungle before you went for a walk. Put sanitization mats in every restaurant, even little mom and pop private eateries. Just taken really, really seriously. Temperature checks before you entered into a restaurant, things like that. So they're doing an awful lot to take care of people. And I'm not seeing numbers going in like crazy either. So social distancing was not an issue whatsoever. But there is a lot in place as far as down to transfers, number of people in the vehicles, dive boats, etc., as well as the hotels, that I think that a lot of countries, and certainly Costa Rica, was doing a phenomenal job.
Excellent. Now, that was my experience going down to Mexico as well. I took a group to Baja at the end, well, I guess it was the beginning of November, and we were actually going on a liveaboard. So same thing, I think for the most part, like the protocols they have in place for the planes and the flights themselves are awesome. The airports were a little bit sketchy. Some places were better than others. You had more room to physically distance, and you felt like people were more respectful of like wearing masks and other things. But definitely in one airport, we did not have that experience. But yeah, once we're in Mexico, it's the same thing. All the little restaurants that we go to, we eat outside, but they still were taking our temperature and dousing us with hand sanitizer and going through the foot bath. And it was also great, I think, being on a liveaboard. We chartered the boat, and they only kept it at just over half capacity. They limited the number of people on board. So everyone, Mexico doesn't require a PCR test, but everyone was getting them in advance anyway, just to be on the safe side. So then once we got there, even though, the crew was super diligent about wearing masks and everything else, everyone just felt super safe because we were all together for a week. Everyone knew everybody, or if they didn't when they got on, they did in the first day, and everyone had a blast. And I think that same thing, I think everyone felt really comfortable, and it definitely, I know a lot of people were hesitant and nervous about traveling ahead of that, but once they see, especially for these little areas that depend so heavily on tourism, they are bending over backwards to ensure that people have a really safe experience. So that was really heartening to see, and we're excited to, as long as we're allowed to do so, we can do so safely, and especially with the vaccine being available, we're really excited to get out there more and support these places.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And there was some upsides to it too for me. I mean, okay, so when I go to the restaurant, I've got to, pump the hand sanitizer and stand there and have my temperature taken, but it's a gun, thermometer gun that doesn't even touch you. It's a split second, then it's, hey, do you have any allergies, food preferences? But then once you go through that little routine that's very quick and painless, like the service for me was phenomenal. Everything was very intimate because you have the social distancing, but you stay in your little bubble of people you're traveling with. I actually saw some plus sides, to have lots of space on boats and in vehicles without any issues, to have your own little area on the beach or, the reefs to yourself without sharing with a whole ton of other divers. There was actually a few positives to it that made it an actual phenomenal time to travel once you go through those little things.
Yeah, 100% agree. Awesome. So I know we had put together a few of the questions that we get all the time. So we might just go ahead. Let's just jump into those. I know one of the questions that we see a lot are, what are the refund or cancellation policies like right now for trips? And that's a tough one to answer because it really varies from place to place. I know from my experience with all of our group trips, they're not offering refunds. They're offering reschedule, let's book this later, or vouchers or credits at the very least. For these places, again, they depend on tourism dollars. And if we just cancel and expect our money back, they're not going to be able to continue running, so we're totally fine with like, hey, let's book it in the future. That's worked out for most people. In a lot of cases, we can actually, if we have someone who can't make our rescheduled dates, we might be able to find someone to take their spot. So we do our best to make that happen, although it's never guaranteed. But Cheryl, what has your experience been?
Yeah, I would say the same. It's important to note in the US that there's no laws in place that say that under situations such as a pandemic, war, things like that, where it's out of everybody's control, that the airlines or the hotels really have to do anything at all. It is completely up to their discretion. This is why if you have a hurricane and your flight is canceled, then the airlines, there's a different rule that comes in under that named storm, because they have the wiggle room to come up with whatever policy they see fit. So it's important to know that there really isn't a law that says they have to do anything at all, even a credit or a rain check. What I've seen from 99% of the hotels, liveaboards, and dive operations is, while they don't have to do anything, there's that balance of wanting to take care of their clients and be fair under the circumstances. So the happy medium is to offer a rain check or a credit for down the road when this is over. If they were to refund financially, they wouldn't be able to sustain it. They wouldn't be around when this thing is over. But most of them have been super flexible in allowing rescheduling. So I haven't had a single client lose a penny as long as they were willing to take that trip once they're able to travel again. And other than that, I think they've been really good about it. And the other side of that is, if you can, I know it's frustrating, and as time goes on, more trips for avid travelers, pile up. But the other side of this is it really does support them to know that you're coming down the road versus trying to cancel. So it helps them immensely also. But for the most part, as I said, we've had one or two refunds. For the most part, it's been credit. I've not had anybody just lose everything where the resort has said, I'm done. Sorry about your luck. You couldn't make it. So your money has disappeared. The one sort of thing here where people have been hearing about the airlines is there's one kind of little rule where a law does come in, just to clarify what I'm saying, and that's the schedule change rule. And the schedule change rule is only for the airlines, and that's if the airlines cancel upon you in advance due to changing their schedule. Typically, this law would be, under normal circumstances, they're messing around with their schedule and things like that. Because of the pandemic and the lack of loads or being able to go into a country, then they've had to proactively cancel those flights. And the government has decided, hey, we're still considering that a schedule change. So if the airlines proactively cancel on you first, even if the reason is a pandemic, then you're entitled to a refund from the airlines. But other than that, there are no other laws in place that you can invoke to get your money back. So I don't know if that kind of clarifies things a little bit. And to be honest, I'm not a lover of the airlines. I think over the years, their customer service has been appalling. But I will say that they've done a tremendous job considering this situation. Even if you can't go, they've been super, super flexible about allowing you to change your tickets, reschedule. It used to be up to a year before the ticket was issued. Now they're going up to 2 years. All the change fees waived, full credit applied to any of their flights, not even necessarily the original destination when you're ready. So I think they've done a super job, even if you're the one that has to cancel.
Now I know that. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say to follow up on that. Just we just flew back Saturday, and we actually had 3 of our divers who were scheduled to fly out early Saturday morning. They called their airline on Friday and actually booked a later flight with no change fee. In fact, they actually got a little bit of a refund back. So we're in absolutely uncharted, unheard of territories right now.
Yeah. And they're also coming out, the US airlines, with permanent waiving of change fees. It depends on the airline and the destination right now. But American and Delta have announced that even when this thing is over, that they are going to be getting rid of change fees, which is something I didn't think I'd ever see.
Yeah, definitely. Now that was going to be one of my questions, actually, seeing if some of those bigger airlines, at least the US carriers, are going to be all going that direction now. And it sounds like they are.
Yeah, I would anticipate United's gonna join any day. Delta started it with just domestic tickets, and then United came out and matched it and added the Caribbean, and then American followed suit. And then a week or two later, American said everywhere, international as well as domestic. And at that point, Delta matched them. So I think United's going to have to catch up any day, but that's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. For those of us who love to travel and unexpected things happen, you just have to be ready. That's great news.
Yeah.
On that note, people are still looking at travel insurance and trying to figure out what does it mean now, what are all these COVID restrictions on travel insurance? Like, how has that changed the way that things work? From what it sounds like to me, if you were actually to have a trip planned and get sick, like become infected with COVID, that's a reason that they would reimburse you if you could not go because of that. Is that correct? Or
yes, and travel insurance companies that we recommend and the ones you've been selling. Basically, if it comes to the borders are closed, things like that, travel insurance doesn't do you any good. However, all the other multitude of reasons that you would buy travel insurance, getting sick, weather, strike, things like that, travel insurance is still very much a good thing to carry. One of those things is now, if the borders are closed, either this end or that end, insurance doesn't cover you. However, if you were to be sick with coronavirus, then that now falls under the medical part of the insurance, and they cover that. And they go so far, at least the travel company that I like to use, Travel Guard, AIG, they go so far as even if you're to test positive, the one caveat has got to be the test has to be doctor ordered. However, if you test positive from a doctor ordered test, you're now considered officially sick with coronavirus, even if you're asymptomatic. And the medical part of that insurance will kick in. The other concern a lot of people have, I think it's a valid one, although thankfully pretty much everybody has been hanging in there so far, thanks to rebookings and reschedulings, a lot of it. But the other part of this that people are concerned about is, hey, I'm taking this rain check and I can't use it for possibly a year. What if the resort isn't there in a year? Well, one of the things that insurance covers is supplier bankruptcy. So if one of these airlines go bankrupt, or one of the resorts or liveaboards do, as long as you're carrying that policy prior to the bankruptcy being filed or predicted, then you would get your entire money back from your insurance. So I think it still has a very, very important part to play. Especially in these times. We're also seeing some destinations require you carry a certain amount of international medical insurance. And a lot of our insurances do at home, but it's a big deductible. It's not really a policy you can show at the airport. Trip insurance covers that requirement in those destinations that want you to be covered, because these destinations are like, if you get sick there, if you have to quarantine for 14 days, who's going to foot the bill? And if you have trip insurance with medical coverage included, which tends to become a standard with the policy, it just depends on the level of how much they cover, then instantly right there you have your proof of medical insurance coverage should you fall sick or test positive at your destination.
Excellent. That is really good to know, because I have seen that as a requirement for more and more countries that are opening up. On that note as well, if someone is kind of still on the fence, like they have a trip booked and they're a little nervous about it, and are they going to be safe to travel by then? Insurance doesn't cover you if you just don't want to go anymore, right?
Right.
But you can get with the cancel for any reason insurance, like if you pay for that kind of top tier, does that cover it? Or
yes, that covers it literally for any reason. Normally that is a premium on top of your insurance. So you have to buy the insurance first. You have to buy it within the first couple of weeks of your initial down payment, and then opt to cover for and cancel for any reason in addition. So it's an extra premium. So there are some kind of, caveats to it that you have to follow. You can't run out now for a trip you originally deposited a year ago and buy the cancel for any reason. But for any new trips, you absolutely could do that. The one thing to be aware of is they only cover 50% right now. They cap it at 50% of the trip. So if the trip is $5,000 and you cancel simply because you don't want to go, then it's only going to cover $2,500 of the trip. So it just depends how much you're kind of willing to lose or wanting to cover. And the other reason is that you're buying insurance in the first place, but that certainly is an option.
Okay.
The most right now, unless, I've had a couple of places where they've been a little bit sticklers that are currently open, but most of them are very, very flexible right now, even if you're uncomfortable. When this first started happening, I think they were still in that original mode. It was new. They were trying to protect themselves. Everybody was in a panic. Right now, they've been kind of super flexible. If somebody is high risk or their job doesn't allow them, they've been really good about working with us on future credits rather than losing everything.
That's great. I know another question we get is especially for people who, haven't yet had to worry about this yet, as you mentioned before, is what happens? How do you get a test if you're required to have one within, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days of your trip? What's the best way to do that to ensure you're going to make it there within that window and still have your test results?
Yeah, this is where you've got to get a little bit imaginative. It's getting easier, but it really depends on the destination. Some of the destinations are 72 hours, depending on what's going on in your area at the time. That can be challenging. But a lot of them are 5 days or 7 days, and that doesn't seem to be an issue at all. The urgent care clinics, a lot of them, you have to kind of call around. Some of them will only see you with symptoms, but some of the pharmacies and some of the even urgent cares are willing to see you without any symptoms whatsoever. So it just kind of what their current load is, and also the same with turnaround times. Sometimes they're 48 hours. When I run my gauntlet, I did it 2 ways. So I did my local urgent care clinic, and they said about 48 to 72 hours. And at the time, I needed 72 hours for travel. And I got it right around 39 hours from when I took the test. This was back in October. The other thing that's kind of interesting is depending on your destination and what airline, a lot of the airlines and airports are starting to come up with ways to meet those requirements. So, for example, American Airlines is working with Let's Get Checked, who are a lab out in California. They run various different types of home testing. And this is an official lab test that they mail you the kit, and it includes overnighting. It's the same price as going to get a COVID test at Rite Aid or somewhere else. And you mail the thing in, it overnights, and then they run those tests super fast. And from start to finish, I think I was 32, 33 hours from when I took my test in the living room to when I got my results. Miami, Tampa airports are putting up stations. Anyone that's been traveling, if you've seen those express spas where you can get your nails done between flights, talk about reinventing yourself during Corona. They're starting to create, they're like express check, and they're putting testing sites at the airports pre-security, so you can go a couple of days before if you're flying out of that airport to anywhere and go and get a test. So it's easier, it's getting easier, and it's fun to see the imaginative way different stakeholders in the industry are meeting those test requirements. My first step would be call your urgent care clinics, things like that, but also depending on your airline and destination, there might be other options as well.
Yeah. I was going to say our experience too was that the and again, if you are planning on flying and traveling anywhere, yeah, just like Cheryl said, call and talk to somebody there to get an idea of the timeline. They'll usually give you a broad range, 2 to 5 days, but at least you know. We have found a couple places that charge a premium and they guarantee results sometimes within 48 hours. Now the problem is that if you go to urgent care or Walgreens or any of these other established testing centers, insurance, if you're insured, insurance is actually required to pay for your COVID test. So there's no money that you should have to pay. These other places that charge you a premium, upwards of $300, but then guarantee you the results, you may only get a small portion of your, insurance may only cover a small portion of it. Because I tried that back in August, and yeah, I think I paid $275. Insurance covered, I think, $100. So
Right.
And it sounds like we've also heard in the DC area of a few places that are starting to offer like super quick results in just a few hours. And those are actually, I think maybe some variation of the PCR test. I need to check on that. But it is exciting to see that we have more testing options available, and it is, seeing those faster turnaround times. Because I know for some of those destinations where it is 72 hours, that can be a little scary if you're trying to operate within that time frame. And on that note, what's the best place to find the guidelines or what different countries require?
So there's a couple of different places that I use. Travel.state.gov is a good one. It's not 100% up to date, but I don't think really anybody is. Everything's changing so quickly. But travel.state.gov is actually a really good source. That's where you go for information about passport. On a normal day, you would find out if you need your passport to be a certain amount of time, or visas or things like that. And right now they're adding coronavirus entry requirements as well. Depending on the page, they then provide a link through to the corresponding government's official corona page so that you can actually go through the checklist. If they have anywhere where you've got to fill in a form in advance, then it's normally on that link. So travel.state.gov, and then pull up your destination is a good place to start. Also IATA, if you Google IATA C19 regulations or regulations map, or even if you just do IATA Corona map, something like that, but it's officially the IATA C19 regulations map. IATA is like the authority on international airline travel and pretty much govern everything under one umbrella. They have a map. Again, it's not 100% up to date, I'm finding, so I tend to use 3 or 4 different sources, but they are also an excellent place to start if you want to just see if somewhere is even open and viable. And then what I would do is I would Google, if you're not finding the link on the travel.state.gov, then Google health department for that destination to actually see the checklist. I personally, just for dive destinations, am kind of keeping a spreadsheet for myself of what is currently open, with a quick synopsis. Hey, 72 hours, fill out the form, temperature test when you get there, and then trying to maintain that link that's live that actually gives the proper full details. You can go, okay, check, and it's done. So those are some good ones. The other one is if you're looking at a destination, for example, some of them are open to people who reside in certain states only based on positivity rate. And most of those countries are using Johns Hopkins positivity rate. So there's a Johns Hopkins coronavirus dashboard. If you Google that, tons of information on what's going on in general, if you want to know what's going on with numbers, testing, etc. But that's generally speaking what I'm finding most countries are using when they say, okay, we're opening up to this state based on their positivity.
Great. Yeah, we've definitely referenced that a lot as well, especially when planning to go to Statia, when they were doing things based on a state and the positivity rate. So that's right. A really good resource. So I guess my last question that, again, we hear all the time is, what are your tips or suggestions to people looking to go on a dive trip here in the next couple of months? What should they be doing ahead of time to make sure they're prepared?
To be honest, the biggest thing is flexibility, willing to be flexible if things change at the last minute. There are some amazing deals going out right now. The service is really good. Everybody has been super helpful. I think the rewards, if you're willing to do it, are really worth the little bit of extra effort it's taking right now. I would start looking at destinations if you want to travel the next couple of months. Your first stop would be to find destinations that are currently open. These vary depending on protocols, but off the top of my head, Mexico and Costa Rica don't require any kind of entry requirements at all, other than temperature testing and asking you some questions at the airport, it doesn't mean that these countries aren't really, really great about managing, keeping everybody safe and clean. However, as far as actually being required to test, those are your two options if you don't want to deal with testing at all. If you're willing to test, there's multiple other islands that are open. Dominica, Grenada's a little bit right now, depending on where you stay. But Dominica, Belize, Honduras, they're all viable options right now with testing. St. Lucia, and they have a 7-day test. So that one is actually, I'm finding everybody is able to meet that. St. Croix, as Jonas recently went to, those are all options. Plus French Polynesia, and with a little bit of effort, Galapagos Islands. So there are some different options out there if you want to go right now. What we are finding is sometimes the airlines are changing the flights around depending on the loads. So the biggest thing would be to be willing to take a deep breath and just handle any schedule changes as they happen. I would definitely still carry trip insurance, even if your destination doesn't require it. But I would identify what sounds good to you and what you're willing to go through, so to speak, to get there. And then make sure that you go on that health department website or call the amazing people at Blue Planet, who will make sure that you have the link to the right information. Go through that checklist, make sure it's criteria that you can meet, and then, to be honest, pack your bag.
Nice. Excellent. Jonas, do you have any tips for folks?
So a couple of things. One is obviously just, this new era that we're in just does require more vigilance. So my suggestions are bring as much hand sanitizer as you can. TSA is actually allowing up to 12 ounces right now. I don't imagine one would possibly use 12 ounces, even across the entire length of a trip, because it's available everywhere. But if you have yours that you like, you know that you can bring that. I also recommend to people bring some snacks, some Luke bars, Cliff bars, whatever you need. Pack sandwiches, just so that when you are in the airports, you don't need to go ahead and hit those crowded food courts. And also because what we've noticed is a lot of those restaurants are just closed in the airport. It almost seems like every other one is open because they just don't have a lot of business. And then, like Cheryl said, just, patience. For the St. Croix trip, can't tell you how many emails we got from people saying, oh my God, my flight's changed. And I told them, I'm like, yeah, it's probably going to happen again. The airline wants us to get there, but be patient. They're working it out. They want you to get to your destination. It might just not be at the time that you want to get there, but at least you get there. So.
No, definitely. And if I could add something, I would say, definitely go on the hotel's website and the dive shop's website where you're going to be staying and diving, and see what they're doing. See what kind of new procedures or protocols they have in place, so you're prepared when you roll and you're not going to be surprised. Because I know it really varies from place to place, but wasn't it Buddy Dive who this summer, when they developed their new protocols, like they want people to be diving with Octos now instead of the integrated Safe Second on your inflator. So just as, things to think about, and in general, bring lots of masks, plan to wear them, follow their rules, because we're visitors in many of these countries. Don't be the bad tourist who comes in, doesn't follow the rules, doesn't wear a mask. They're trying to stay safe too. This is their livelihood. So definitely do your research in advance. And again, like Cheryl said, if you have questions about any of it, feel free to get in touch with us at Blue Planet or Cheryl at Deep Blue Adventures. And that's, again, I have to put a little plug in. That's the nice thing about these group trips. We do all of that for you. We're going to find all of that information and give it to you so that it's done. You just, you'll have all of that information in your inbox. We'll share it with you in a Google folder. And any of your questions we can get answered ahead of time. So we try to make it as easy as possible for you. But do y'all have anything else to add? We've gone over our scheduled time here.
Yeah, I mean, things are going to change. Right now, there's not been a global coordinated response. I don't know if a lot of countries were waiting for this to just blow over or what, but there hasn't been a globally coordinated response. However, the travel industry itself has actually been really proactive on this right from the start. They knew it wasn't going to go away. So these things like where you're seeing the airlines or the airports come out with pockets of testing, and it definitely is fragmented right now. This is because they've been waiting for a coordinated response from our government, and it just, well, all governments, and it just didn't happen. So now they're trying to find ways to come up with solutions. But the good news is you've got the World Travel Trade Council and a lot of other industry stakeholders globally that are meeting and pushing each of their governments for a globally coordinated response, down to protocols of your hiking guide, your taxi, your hotels, to get the world moving again. So I think it's going to get easier. I think finally sort of the shock and awe of all of this thing has worn off, and we're now starting to realize that it's going to be around for a while. So what we're going to do to live with it. So I think we're going through the toughest time right now. I think testing and other things like that are going to be part of our lives for quite a while. However, I think they're going to be a lot easier and a lot less difficult to navigate as time goes on.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Cheryl. And thank you all for joining us today for Travel Tuesday. Like I said, go ahead and add, if you have questions, even after this is over, go ahead and throw them into the comments, and we will do our best to get back to each and every one. And feel free to get in touch with us, send us a DM, shoot us an email, give us a call. We'd love to chat and hear what your questions are related to anything scuba travel related. And yeah, we hope to see you all again next week for Travel Tuesday. Not sure what we're talking about yet, but I'm sure it's going to be awesome. So you should totally come back next Tuesday. All right. Thank you all again for joining us. And if you want more information about Cheryl and her amazing business, just visit deepblueadventures.com. You have a gorgeous new website, which we love. Oh yeah, join us. We have one spot left for Stacia if anyone's interested this February. Awesome. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.